This chapter is on the parts and the functions of the lymphatic system, but we're also going to go over the white blood cells and similar cells that help to destroy pathogens. The different functions of the lymphatic system. And so here, one of the functions, it says that it carries excess fluid from the interstitial spaces back to the bloodstream. Well, so what does that mean? Well, so outside of our cells, imagine that these are cells. There's fluid called the interstitial fluid. And so it's in this space called the interstitial space. Well, so then around here, there are lymphatic capillaries that help to absorb this extra fluid, because if you don't absorb this fluid, then it's going to end up building up here. Okay, so then eventually this fluid that's absorbed is going to end up in the bloodstream, in the circulation. Another function for the lymphatic system is that it takes the pathogens that may have been absorbed from this fluid to the lymph nodes. And so then the lymph nodes have a bunch of white blood cells that are going to help to destroy the pathogen. Another function is that there are these special lymph vessels called the lacteals. Now these are in the small intestine though, and they absorb fat that was consumed in the food that we eat. Okay, so at the bottom, this is showing the order of how the fluid flows. And so first, lymphatic capillaries pick up the fluid. Then when they join together, they're going to turn into lymphatic vessels. Know that lymphatic vessels connect the lymph nodes. And so again, here, the immune cells are going to help to destroy these pathogens. After the lymph nodes, there's the larger lymphatic vessels that come next. These connect to the lymphatic trunks. Then the lymphatic collecting ducts. And then finally, the collecting ducts are going to drain into the subclavian veins. Okay, this is just showing the lymphatic capillaries. And so the background, these shapes, those are the cells. And so it's saying that these lymph capillaries are around our cells. And notice that our blood capillaries are also around this region. Tissue fluid, or the interstitial fluid. So once again, it says that it enters the lymphatic capillaries. Note that the fluid that's inside these lymphatic capillaries and then the vessels, this fluid is called lymph. And so we could underline the fluid is now lymph. Then these lymphatic capillaries turn into lymphatic vessels. Oh, and at the bottom it's just saying how these lymph capillaries are around the blood capillaries. But so here, the important part, know that the fluid is called lymph. One more part to this. Lymphatic capillaries are very similar to blood capillaries in that they only have one layer that is making up the simple squamous tissue. And so only one wall. Next part, this is again just showing how the lymphatic capillaries are taking up this extra fluid. And so here the fluid goes in, but it's not able to go out. That's because here there are these special valves that close after the fluid goes through. After the lymphatic capillaries join together, then we get lymphatic vessels. And so here it says that the walls of lymphatic vessels are similar to veins, but they are thinner. And so then these lymphatic vessels are going to connect to the lymph nodes. And we're going to talk about the lymph nodes in just a little bit. After the lymphatic vessels and the lymph nodes, there are the larger lymphatic vessels, but then the fluid is going to go into the lymphatic trunks. And so here we can underline these drain the lymph, meaning the lymph is entering the lymphatic trunks from the lymphatic vessels. After the lymphatic trunks, next is the lymphatic collecting ducts. And so here, lymph vessels to the lymphatic trunks and to the collecting ducts. So that's how the fluid is going in this order. Know that there are two lymphatic collecting ducts. We have the thoracic duct and the right lymphatic duct. We can see on the picture the thoracic duct is this thick one, and the right lymphatic duct is more on the right side of the body, and this one is draining the fluid from the right arm and the right side of the brain. Here, the picture on the left, this is showing the thoracic duct, and it's showing how it does drain from the different parts. But then on this side, it is also showing the right lymphatic duct. On the right side, this is talking about how after surgery, cancer surgery for the breast, many of these lymphatic capillaries and lymph nodes may be removed. And so if they are removed, then this can actually disrupt the lymphatic flow and cause edema. And so I'm going to put here, due to removal of lymph vessels and also lymph nodes. We can put vessels here for now. Here on the picture, it's again just listing the order, how the lymphatic capillaries connect with lymph vessels. Lymph nodes are then taking the fluid from lymph vessels. After the lymph nodes, you do get the larger lymphatic vessels. Next part, the lymphatic trunk, the lymphatic collecting ducts, and then finally the fluid is then going to drain into the subclavian vein. Tissue fluid is similar consistency to blood plasma. So blood plasma meant the fluid inside the blood. And so here it's saying the tissue fluid, what does it contain? It's got water, nutrients, gases, hormones. It's just that here at the bottom, it says that tissue fluid, it's similar to blood plasma, except there are no plasma proteins. And so here, this symbol means minus. And so no large proteins such as albumins, globulins, those you find in the blood plasma instead. Just like in veins, the pressure of the fluid inside the lymph vessels is very, very low, meaning the fluid flows very slowly. And so it has this low hydrostatic pressure. And similar to how blood flows inside the veins against gravity, here we see those different functions again that can help to move the lymph. Muscle activity, so when the muscles contract, this helps to push the fluid up the lymph vessels. And so that's one. We can put a star here. Contraction of the skeletal muscles helps move the lymph. Another one that's similar for the veins, when we breathe, so breathing, well, really because of how the diaphragm is contracting, this also helps us send the lymph upwards. And the lymphatic vessels, the larger ones anyway, they do have smooth muscle in their walls, and so some kind of contraction in the walls helps to move the fluid inside these lymph vessels. And once again, just like in veins, lymph vessels also have valves. And so again, when the fluid goes up, then the valve closes so that the fluid cannot fall back down. Exercising does help to move the fluid though. And so here, more fluid can move up against gravity during exercising. Okay, so now we're going to go over the special lymphatic tissues and the lymphatic organs. Mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue, this is also called MALT. And so here, what are these special tissues that might be found in the digestive, respiratory, urinary, reproductive tracts? So here, know that tonsils and appendix, these are considered this mucosa-associated lymphoid tissue. And so here, they're really composed of lymphatic nodules. Okay, so know that these are part of the malt. Also Peyer's patches. Now know that these are in the small intestine instead. And so, with tonsils, appendix, the Peyer's patches, these contain white blood cells. So that if there are any pathogens, the white blood cells can destroy these pathogens. Lymphatic organs instead, the lymph nodes, the thymus, and the spleen are considered to be the lymphatic organs. So now for the lymph organs, we're going to start with the lymph nodes. Here this shows what lymph nodes look like. And so here in this picture on the left one, this weird shaped part is a lymph node. And these little string looking things that are attaching to it, those are actually the lymph vessels. On the right side, it's just showing the drawing version of it. And so some of the vessels bring the fluid in. The afferent lymphatic vessels, I'm going to put a note here, these bring fluid in. And that's what afferent refers to. Think afferent for arrival. Here, this one arrives. Versus then the lymphatic vessels that take the fluid out of the lymph nodes, after the lymph nodes filter the fluid. So now that's called the efferent lymphatic vessel. Remember E for exit. So here, this one exits lymph node. Or I should say the fluid is actually the one that's exiting. And so in our lymph nodes, we have lymphocytes and macrophages. Lymphocytes are considered to be white blood cells, and the macrophages are a type of immune cell. This picture is showing where the lymph nodes may be found, and so really in major parts of our body, except that we don't have lymph nodes in the central nervous system. Okay, so in our neck, in the armpits, the groin region, it's also showing there in the abdomen. So then what did the lymph nodes do? They filter harmful particles from the lymph. So here the pathogens, they go in and they get trapped here. So the white blood cells inside can kill them. Another function for the lymph nodes says here immune surveillance. Well, here once the white blood cells see that pathogen, then they can go and alert other white blood cells so that they also know to look for the pathogen. And so we can underline here, this is for monitoring body fluids using the macrophage and lymphocytes. Now, red bone marrow helps to make white blood cells, but know that lymph nodes are also regions that can make lymphocytes. Okay, we're going to get to the lymphocytes towards the end of the chapter and talk about how they help to fight off the invading bacteria or other pathogens. Macrophages, though, these are able to eat, meaning engulf and digest foreign substances. They can also get rid of damaged cells and other debris. Next organ we're going to talk about is the thymus. Now the thymus, interestingly, it's large in babies and infants in early childhood, but it starts to shrink at puberty. Let's underline this part, and then later just turns to fat. Okay, and what's the function? Know that the thymus helps with T lymphocyte maturation. Here, it actually makes a hormone, and so the thymus is considered a gland because it makes a hormone. It makes this hormone called thymosin, and so this hormone stimulates T lymphocyte maturation. Another lymphatic organ is the spleen. This is the largest lymphatic organ. And it's kind of just like a large lymph node. But here, blood vessels are actually attaching to this organ. But yeah, it does say here it resembles a large lymph node. Here, it's got these regions called the sinuses that fill with blood. Now, in the spleen, there are these two tissue types. There's the white pulp. White pulp regions contain lymphocytes. So think lymphocytes are white blood cells, so the white pulp contains mostly white blood cells. But then the red pulp, so then for this one, there are red blood cells in these parts, but you can also find lymphocytes, macrophages as well. This picture on the bottom right side, this is showing the white pulps and the red pulps. So the white patches are the white pulps, but then the region surrounding the white pulp is then the red pulp. All these two different parts are then related to the functions of the spleen. The spleen filters the blood to remove old blood cells, and it can also help to break down old blood cells. And the other function, because the spleen contains the lymphocytes, macrophages, well, it helps to activate the immune system, meaning to notify the other immune cells to look for the pathogen that was encountered here. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the defenses of the body to protect us against infections. So first, I've been saying the word pathogen. What does that mean? Just says here it's a disease-causing agent. Pathogens are bacteria, viruses, or they can be these other microorganisms that can cause us illnesses. Now, we have different defense mechanisms. Innate defenses. This means what we are born with. And no training is needed for these to work. Now, what I mean by that is that when we talk about lymphocytes, for example, they have to be trained to look for specific pathogens. But here, innate defenses, no, you don't need to train them. They're just there from birth. So they're not selective. Versus adaptive specific defenses, so this one includes lymphocytes. The T cells, the T type, and the B type. And so those do need to be trained to go look for the different pathogens. And so yeah, these are more specific. They're targeting the specific ones. And it's written here as well. It says carried out by lymphocytes. Alright, so what are these innate defenses that we're born with? Well, mechanical barriers. No, this one, it just really means our skin, but also mucous membranes. And so, next bullet point does say to prevent the pathogens from entering our body. It is also considered to be the first line of defense. Okay, so some of the examples are epidermis, so the skin. It says when it sloughs off, it does get rid of the bacteria that's on the superficial part. In our respiratory tract, the mucus traps the bacteria, other pathogens, and the cilia move up this mucus upwards on the trachea. Hair traps pathogens, just another example. Now, it is interesting that some illnesses infect certain species, but not other species. This is called species resistance. And so we could underline here, if you do see this on the exam, it means that certain species are resistant to diseases that others may be infected by. Okay, so now next, chemical barriers, not selective. Enzymes, these help to kill pathogens because enzymes can be quite strong. So we can underline this part. Interferons. Now know that these are actually released by infected cells. And these infected cells are infected by viruses. So we're going to put here, released by virus infected cells. Another type of chemical barrier, these are actually just proteins called defensins. Put a star for this one. Now it says these are peptides, meaning again proteins that are produced by neutrophils. Other granulocytes as well. And what they do is they kind of act like bullets. So they make openings in the cell membrane or the walls of the pathogen. So yeah, so just like bullets, so now the cell actually ends up deflating, losing its fluid, and finally it ends up dying. Complement. Now this is actually just a group of proteins, but what it does is, so we can underline group of proteins, but here these proteins help stimulate inflammation, but then also call over phagocytes so that phagocytes such as neutrophils or macrophages can go and eat these pathogens that have been marked by complement proteins. Okay, so now this one is a cell though. Natural killer cells. These go after anything that's foreign in our body. Now, they also make these special substances called perforins that also act like bullets. We can underline above secreting, just so you know that perforins are made by these cells. Now, natural killer cells also enhance inflammation. And here it's saying this as well. Natural killer cells are not selective. They go after any foreign cell, but they're also able to go after cancer cells. Another innate defense that's very important to us is inflammation. And so with inflammation, this causes white blood cells to come out of the blood vessels. So we could just put it here. White blood cells exit blood vessels to go to infection sites. Or this could be an injury site as well. In the next part, we're going to start to talk about adaptive defenses instead, after we finish the innate ones.